Hey everybody, it's Dr. May. How are you? Well, I hope things are good in your world. Today I have a video for you about feedback. Okay, so this is something we all deal with in subtle and not so subtle ways. Okay, and getting better at learning how to receive feedback could really be an important way for us to get better at improving ourselves and working on our own recovery and our own personal growth. So that's what today is going to be all about. All right, so hold on. And coming. I think it's coming. Ah, there we go. Sometimes computers are a little slow, right? Okay, so the art of receiving feedback. So if you're in treatment especially, one of the things you're going to need to learn how to do is receive feedback from your therapist or other group members about how you're doing, right? You came to treatment, let's say, because you don't know everything about yourself, right? There's some areas that you're unaware of or you can't figure out what to do. So keeping our ears open for feedback from other people could give us better clues about how we can move forward and the kind of changes we might need to make to improve our life. So it's really good to be able to do this better. So let's first define it, right? What's feedback? So feedback is any information you get about yourself. Okay, any information. And it's how we learn from ourselves about experiences and other people. So this could be direct, indirect, verbal, or nonverbal. So for example, if I'm driving slow on the highway and someone's tailgating me or beeping me, that's feedback. If I get on stage and I perform and the audience applauds, that's feedback, right? Or if someone sits me down and tells me exactly what I need to work on, that's very direct, but that's also feedback. So it could come in all different kinds of forms. And even, it doesn't even have to come from a person, right? Like if I pick up a pan from the oven and I burn my hand, that's also feedback. Like I realize, wow, that was hot. And now I feel this. And so I realize something about that situation, right? In a sensory way, I'm getting feedback about it. So we could keep our eyes and ears open to feedback in all of its forms and, figure out, well, what's the kind of feedback I need to get better at receiving, right? Because feedback is hard. Um, all right, so basically, if it's interpersonal though, there's three basic types of feedback that they talk about. So one is appreciation, right? So if someone says, oh, thanks so much for doing that, I really appreciate it. I see all the hard work that you did and all the effort you put in, and that was a big help for me. That's appreciation feedback. And sometimes that feels really good and we need to hear that just to keep us motivated and to keep us doing what we're doing, right? It's very reinforcing, so to speak. Um, Coaching feedback is when someone gives us feedback about what we need to do to improve or do better. So like in that picture, if you literally have a coach in let's say a football player, the coach is telling you exactly what you need to do to improve your game, right? He tells the team how they should work better together, what kind of plays to do, how to better throw the ball, what routes to run, right? So he's going to tell them, what skills they need to improve and how they need to do it. So that's coaching. All right. And finally, evaluation. So that's when you're kind of told where you stand. So if I was on that football team, I may want to know, okay, all right, I know I need to improve on A, B, and C, but do you think I'm going to make the varsity team? Or do you think I'm good enough to make a team in college? Right. So that's an evaluation. I want to know, where my abilities place me, maybe in terms of other people or in terms of what I can achieve. Right. And a job, it might be an evaluation to determine, do I stand a chance of getting a promotion? Am I skilled enough to get one? Or in a relationship, it might be, all right, so I know you're happy with our relationship to some degree, but is it good enough for us to get married? Are we ready to make that leap? That's part of the evaluation, right? So we have to be aware of what kind of feedback are we looking for, and maybe which types of those feedback are the hardest for us. Okay, because receiving feedback can be hard. Okay, let's face it. I mean, sometimes in certain situations we could take it in, and kind of listen to it, but other times we really, try to shut the door on it. It's very hard to hear, you know, like depending on who's saying it and how it's being said and stuff like that, we might really resist it. We might do what they call wrong spotting. We might jump all over the person and tell them why their feedback's wrong and why it doesn't make sense, and we kind of shut it out, right? So ask yourself this question and reflect on it, right? Why, for me, is receiving feedback hard? and under what circumstances. And that could give you a good starting point for where you need to work on your feedback receiving skills. And we're going to talk about a lot of those later, okay? All right, so some feedback triggers, right? Things that make feedback hard for us. One is what they call a truth trigger, right? So if someone gives you feedback that you feel is just not true or it's not helpful, like that could get you kind of annoyed. Like if someone tells you something that's, you know, let's say you did a piece of art and you don't, and it's not that good, and you know it's not that good, and they're like, "Oh, that's brilliant, that's amazing." You might be annoyed by that because it may not be the truth, right? Or let's say you know you screwed up on something and someone was like, "Oh no, you didn't screw up." Or let's say you did a great job and someone was like, "Oh, that was awful." But you know that like factually they're wrong. It's hard to take that feedback, especially if it's coming from somebody in a place of authority, right? Okay, relationship triggers. So think about it. Sometimes it's hard to receive feedback from people we don't like. Like if you already have a strained relationship with the person and then they give you some sort of critical feedback, sometimes you just want to punch them in the face. You just don't want to hear it from that person. Or they deliver it in a kind of a judgmental way. And that can really rub you the wrong way. On the other hand, it could also be hard to receive feedback from people that you like and admire. Because if they say something that sounds critical, it could be totally crushing, right? Like in my house, we watched this show about stocks, you know, this guy, Jim Cramer, and these callers, they call in all excited, "Hey, booyah, Jim, and give me some advice about the stocks," right? And there's probably their one chance to talk to this guy who's like this really cool, smart guy. And if they say, "Well, what do you think about this stock? I think it's really good because of A, B, and C." And he's like, "No, no, no, sell it." They might be crushed by that because it's like someone they admire that's telling them now you made a bad decision, right? So sometimes it's hard to hear, you know, feedback from people we really care about because we want them to love us. We want to get the admiration from them. We want to get the appreciation, not the, you know, what do you need to do differently or you're wrong, right? Okay, so then identity triggers. So let's think about this, right? So we form our identities a lot of the time by telling ourselves stories about ourselves or assigning to ourselves certain qualities or characteristics. And we kind of feel like we're safe in our little story about how things are. And then someone comes along and gives us feedback, and it could kind of poke holes through or shatter this story we told ourselves about our identity. And that could be crushing in a way. You know, we're not physically maybe in danger, but maybe we feel like our ego is going to be shattered in some form, right? So I don't know if you've ever seen the show, The Prophet, this guy, Marcus Lemonis. So he goes into struggling businesses that call and want to be on the show because they know they're in trouble, right? And they want advice from this guy. But yet when he comes in as an expert and gives them advice, a lot of them fight him tooth and nail. They resist it because they've attached their identity to this business they created. Their self-worth is so tied into this business that when he says, no, you need to change this and you need to change that, you're doing it wrong, they get so upset by it. You know, it's crushing to them, right? So that's why identity triggers are hard, because we get so invested in who we are and how we constructed our world that even though we know it might not be working for us, when someone tells us otherwise, it could really be hard, right? Same thing in therapy. Like, even if you know, you need to change things, you may want so much more acceptance than you want feedback about change, right? That the balance might be hard to negotiate sometimes. So if your therapist says, you know, you really need to change this, you might be like, no, I don't, you know, or well, what else can I do? Okay. So this is stuff we need to be mindful of, because all of these are stuff we struggle with from time to time that can get in the way. Okay, so here's some tips for receiving feedback. I have about 3 slides on this, so there's a whole lot of tips. Okay, so how can we get better at doing this? So one is, if someone's sitting down and talking to you about feedback and it's coming in that more direct way, try to just stay calm. Take a deep breath, try to relax your muscles, take on a more open posture, and be patient. Just don't jump all over the person, even if it's hard, right? So this takes some impulse control, some self-control, but give them a chance, okay? It might be hard, but try to just let it in, okay? So listen, try to be open and curious, right? So instead of just defending yourself and telling them why you're right and they're wrong, see if they have a point, right? See if there's some kernel of truth in what they're saying, even if you don't like them, even if you don't like what they're saying or how they're saying it or the tone they're using, try not to dismiss it just because of that stuff, because there might be something in there that's useful to you. Okay, and if you're not sure what they mean, you know, ask them some questions. Maybe if they explain it a little bit more, you'll be able to relax and say, oh, okay, I get it, right? And especially maybe if you understand that they're just trying to help. Sometimes we forget that the person's trying to help us because we feel so threatened by it, okay? But if you remember who it is and why they're saying it, sometimes their intentions really are okay. So yeah, so shift from that's wrong to tell me more. So get them to explain, dialogue about it, you know, kind of go forward with it a little bit. And sometimes, you know, even after they explain it, you might disagree, you know, and sometimes people just have different perceptions. But still, if a lot of people have a different perception than you, maybe they still have a point. Maybe not everyone sees it your way and it's worth taking in other points of view. All right, so for example, I'm in a creative writing group and we share our stories and our works of, you know, writing and stuff. And sometimes, you know, a couple people might say, you know, that one section over here, that was unclear. I didn't know what you meant until further down the story. And I'm thinking, well, I thought it was pretty clear. But if a few people start saying it, it's like, you know what, maybe it wasn't as clear as I thought. I gotta consider that, right? So it's a difference in perception, but maybe they still have a point that should be looked at. Okay. All right, so next, tips for receiving feedback, part 2, okay? So be receptive to seeing your blind spots. So what the gift that other people can give us is to show us things that we can't see ourselves. So everybody has blind spots. Some people's blind spots are bigger than others, right? Some people want to keep their blind spots because they're afraid to look, which I understand. But if you're open to seeing what they are, you know, you could do something about it, right? So if a truck has a blind spot, the cars that go into them are in danger, right? So when we get into our blind spot territory, we could be, you know, caught by surprise by situations. We could end up acting impulsively or unskillfully. So when we're aware of them, we have much more choice, right? So the car has much more choice, the truck rather, when the cars are in front of him and he could see them than when the cars are out of his range of vision. So like a wise mind perspective, whatever we are able to see and acknowledge, we have power of choice. Okay, and hopefully a wise mind choice. Okay, and another tip is to separate the feedback you're getting from your feelings about the person or that relationship. So even if someone you can't stand is giving you feedback, try to separate your feelings about that person from what they're actually saying. And if you need to work through relationship issues too, do that in a separate conversation. Try not to combine them in one big messy argument, right? Do one thing first and then another thing next, okay? Actually, I have a quick interlude. So Ian Van Zandt, who you guys may have heard of, she's a kind of a spiritual teacher and she's on TV, she's been on Oprah, she's books. She has some really nice books, actually. I definitely check it out. But she wrote something once and she said, well, if one person tells you you're a horse, they're probably crazy. If two people tell you you're a horse, they're probably kind of stupid. But if three people tell you you're a horse, you better look in the mirror and see if you have a saddle on your back and hay hanging out of your mouth, right? So if people keep giving you the same feedback over and over and coming from different places, maybe they have a point. You know, they're not all crazy. Sometimes people are really seeing something that's in your blind spot that you're not seeing, right? So if people keep telling you, you know, you drink way too much. Wow, damn, you're drinking a lot. Are you okay? And people keep telling you that, maybe you have a problem with alcohol, right? Something like that, okay? So something to consider. All right, so let's go back to the slide. So at the bottom, it's important for us to be assertive about the kind of feedback we're looking for. So now that you know these categories of feedback, you could specifically ask for what you want. Like try to reflect on what you're really looking for and then ask the person. Because if it's mixed up, you might be disappointed, right? So if you really want feedback about what to do to be better, and someone's just saying, hey, that was a great job, you might be a little frustrated by that because you really want specific direction, right? Whereas other times you may just want someone to say, wow, thanks so much, I really appreciate it, but they're giving you advice and that gets really annoying. Other times, you know, they might be telling you how to do better, but you just want to know, well, but am I doing good enough to get a promotion, right? You want that evaluation. So think about what you actually want and try to communicate that, and it makes things much clearer for everybody. So this is where like a dear man skill could come in. All right, so tips for receiving feedback, part 3. All right, so this one is a concept called growth mindset, which is talked about by Carol Dweck. And she has a book called Mindset, and she also has a TED Talk and probably some other stuff out there that I'm not thinking of at the moment. But it's a really important concept for self-growth as well as educational growth or anything else you're thinking about. So instead of a fixed mindset where we feel like we either have an ability or we don't, this is much more flexible. It's more like acknowledging that we're all on a journey of learning, and feedback is important in that journey, right? And so we have a receptivity to what people are telling us because we know it's going to help us move forward. So this is what a growth mindset is really all about. And it includes all the things in that graphic I put there. So acknowledging that failure is an opportunity to grow. So if we fail and someone tells us what we did wrong and what we could do better, that's good, right? We want to learn from our failures. My effort and attitude determine my abilities, right? So if we have an openness to learning, openness to what people have to say about us, that's good, right? I'm inspired by the success of others. So all these things are related to the art of receiving feedback. Okay, so keep all this stuff in mind. And one more thing I want to share with you is a resource. This book, Thanks for the Feedback. Even when it's off base, unfair, poorly delivered, and frankly, you're not in the mood. That's a great subtitle, right? This was a really interesting book. So I would definitely check it out if you're more interested about feedback information. And I did get some of the info from this presentation from this book. So thanks to those authors. All right. So thanks for listening. And if you have any feedback for me, feel free to leave it in the comments. But I hope this helps you, and I'll talk to you soon. Okay, guys? All right. Have a good day.